How do you change fractions and decimals into percentages? Well, fractions, decimals, and percentages are three different ways of expressing an amount or a number. Some examples of fractions would be 2/5, 3/4, and 1/8. Examples of decimals would be 0.4, 0.25, 0.621. And examples of percentages would be 15%, 45%, 80%. So fractions, decimals, and percentages are all parts of a whole. When writing fractions, the whole can be divided into as many parts as you want. Here, our whole is divided into 5 parts. Here it's 4 parts. And in this fraction, it's 8 parts. But it could be 20 parts, 200 parts, 500 parts. Any number of parts you want. Now, decimals and percentages can be written as fractions, but they're a little bit pickier. For example, 0.4 means 4/10. 0.25 is 25 hundredths. 0.621 is 621 thousandths. See, decimals are a bit pickier because the denominator has to be 10 or a power of 10, such as 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and so on. Now, if we were to write these percentages as fractions, well, 15% would be 15 hundredths, and 45% would be 45 hundredths, and 80% would be 80 hundredths. Percentages like to have a denominator of 100. In fact, percent means per 100. It's parts out of 100. Well, now that we understand what fractions, decimals, and percentages are and how they can be written, let's talk about how we can change fractions and decimals into percentages. Well, let's begin with converting fractions to percentages. Well, we know that percentages are simply fractions whose denominator is 100. So if we could express the fraction 2/5 as a fraction whose denominator is 100, we'd be all set. We'd know the percentage. We want to find an equivalent fraction for 2/5 whose denominator is 100. Well, 100 is 20 times bigger than 5. So to change a denominator of 5 into a denominator of 100, we'd have to multiply by 20. And if we multiply the denominator by 20, we have to multiply the numerator by 20. And that gives us 40. So we've just written 2/5 as a fraction out of 100 parts. So now we know the percentage. The percentage is simply 40%. Let's try it for the next fraction, 3/4. We want to rewrite 3/4 as a fraction whose denominator is 100. Well, 4 times 25 equals 100, so we should multiply the numerator by 25, and that gives us 75. So now we have an equivalent fraction whose denominator is 100, so we know the percentage. That's 75%. Well, now let's try 1/8. Can we make an equivalent fraction that means 1/8 whose denominator is 100? Well, 8 is not a factor of 100, so it's not as easy to convert 1/8 into a fraction whose denominator is 100. So we're going to need another method. We're going to have to change 1/8 into a decimal and then change the decimal into a percentage. So we should take a look at how to convert decimals into percentages. Well, we can think of a decimal as being part of one whole. So each of these decimals, 0.4, 0.25, and 0.621, is just a part of a whole. But percentages are a part of 100. So to convert a decimal into a percentage, all we have to do is multiply the decimal by 100. So decimal times 100 equals a percentage. Let's begin with 0.4. To change this decimal to a percentage, all we have to do is multiply by 100. And when we multiply a decimal by 100, all we're doing is moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So we're going to need to add a 0 after the 4, and now we can move the decimal 2 places to the right. And our answer is 40%. Now let's try it for the next decimal, 0.25. We're going to multiply that decimal by 100. And to do so, we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and that gives us 25%. And finally, the last decimal, 0.621, we multiply that by 100. We move the decimal 2 places to the right, and that gives us 62.1%. So to change a decimal into a percentage, you simply multiply the decimal by 100. So now let's use this information to convert the fraction 1/8 into a percentage. So to change 1/8 into a percentage, we're going to do so by first changing it to a decimal, and then change the decimal into a percent. So how do we change 1/8 into a decimal? Well, the fraction bar in a fraction means to divide. So this fraction is really saying 1 divided into 8 equal parts. So let's do the division. Now we know our answer is going to be a decimal. So let's place a decimal point after the 1 and add a few zeros. We can place the decimal point in our answer as well. And we know our answer is not going to have any 1s, so let's place a 0 in the 1's place. So our answer is 0.125. And to convert a decimal into a percent, all we have to do is multiply by 100. And to multiply by 100, we move the decimal 2 places to the right. So our answer is 12.5%. And that's how you change fractions and decimals into percentages.